Nice to have you here tonight.
Thank you. What a pleasure to be here. And welcome to everybody listening all over the world. Welcome to the
Yeah,
World Wide Web. This is so
world
nice.
worldwide clubhouse.
Yes.
Yeah. What I can say about Ron is, as a human, Ron hates to see people struggle. Ron believes that knowledge is the only thing in the world that you can give away and still have. Helping people with knowledge, skills, and experience we already have enhances their lives and in no way diminishes our capacity. It enhances it. So, hello, Ron. It's so great to have you here.
Likewise. Thank you for the privilege and opportunity to speak to your tribe. This is so fun.
Thank you. Thank you. So, let's kick this off with what is the biggest struggle that you see in the small business world or in business in general right now?
One word, consistency. Consistency of message, method, process, market, results, frankly, everything.
Wow, that's
I've got a couple examples to share that are pretty profound, if I may. By the way, how long do we have for the call, just to keep
an
respectful
hour.
of... Oh, my.
An hour, yes.
No problem.
I will give you some breaks so that you can get off the microphone and have a sip of water and so on.
Oh, no, I talk for a living, so it's not a problem. But thank you for the courtesy, but I'm good. But okay, so here's an example. I was at a large home improvement box store on the weekend looking for what the computer website says they have two of. Got to the shelf, it was empty. Staff had no clue, so I can't buy what they can't sell. Secondly, lack of inventory control, lack of store organization, no process to put things back where they belong so they can be sold, no reorder on minimum stock process. They wait till there's none left. And with today's supply chain issues, that's a huge problem. Pretty much every department is involved, except the ivory tower has no idea of this. And it's not only store-wide, it's chain-wide. Another example, we went out just after that fiasco to another store well known for its flat-packed furniture assembled with an Allen key. We were looking for a fabric play tunnel for kids. Website listed in 2 locations. Why 2? I don't know. One was amid totally unrelated flat-packed storage box products and no stock on the shelf. We asked the staff to help us and they directed us to the children's bedroom area. Well, that made more sense. Where there's 47 listed, and there they were. Better system, but why 2 locations? Took twice as long to wander through this linearly arranged store, backtracking all over till we finally found the item. Time is money, and so is the customer's time. And the last one I have for you is that a fancy coffee shop we go to dumps 5% of their drinks down the drain, having made them wrong. There's no button for very, very light ice. No means to have the cashier tell the maker, standard mix, so instead of removing the ice, they dump the whole drink and start over from the same flawed instructions at a cost of 5 more minutes that not every customer has to spend there, especially if it's in the drive-through. So in all cases, inconsistency of process and the whole lot more that the ivory tower doesn't know. They see net profit, not millions lost. It's like bleeding to death from 1,000 paper cuts, 1 drop at a time.
Wow, that sounds extremely painful.
Well, it's expensive.
And it's expensive. Yes, yes. I just want to, oh, hi, Pascal. Thank you for joining us. I just want to let everyone know, remind everyone, if you would like to ask a question or if you have a comment or something you'd like to add, please do raise your hand and I'll bring you up on stage. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you, Adil. Okay, so I'm just looking at the back channel messages as well, Ron, for your information.
Thank you.
So how does this happen with, all of these things going awry? Even in the businesses that a lot of us consider that have totally got their processes nailed.
Well, I think before they became the billion-dollar giants with thousands of employees, most business start off as a hobby-style skill or side hustle. Then they turn into a moneymaker. Then they become a real small business. And they grow, you'll love this one, for all the wrong reasons. And suddenly it's not a hobby anymore. it's a problem, which I'll detail in the sense that it grows because it starts off with word of mouth. There's no marketing. There's no need to market. Everybody knows you. They buy from you. Next thing you know, you've sold to everybody you know. You don't have the marketing. You've got inventory. And now either you have no customers or you've got to stop making stuff to find someone to buy your stuff. And this is where it just grinds to a problematic halt. Multiply that by 1,000 and have a mega buck business. Some of those problems continue to persist at the largest companies in the world.
Wow. So why does this continue to be a challenge for business owners, large and small?
Well, very quickly, they take on too many hats. And you've heard that phrase, I'll wear too many hats, and too many roles or functions, most of which they're not actually formally trained in, skilled at, or proficient at. And these lead to errors in decisions, in predictions, and results. And yet, pushed by their own determination, or sadly, just plain ego, they struggle till they get it right or something breaks. Something could be the bank. You've heard the phrase break the bank. Could be their back, which is just too much work and stress and they physically get hurt or exhausted, or their marriage or relationships. And sometimes it even breaks the customer base. And now they have no customers.
Sorry about that, Ron.
No, that's okay.
So I get it with big companies like the other ones that remain unnamed,
Yes.
but can't like small business people or medium business sizes, can't they hire a VA or get a CRM system or a marketing company to do these jobs for them?
Well, they can, but too often they get caught up buying what they think is the solution, or they spend more money than they're even making. And it's back to being a hobby because they're not making enough money to pay for the services they've now invoked. And basically, they're giving away too much stock in their company. So what I've noticed, and I've talked to thousands of business owners over the years that I've been doing this, people hire people they know, like, and trust. We've all heard this one. So how can a business owner trust someone with their business element, whatever particular aspect we're talking about, when they themselves don't know enough about it in the first place? Otherwise, they do it themselves. Now, I have an accountant, I have a webmaster, I have people that work for me on a contractual basis because I need their help. But the thing is, I do my own bookkeeping and I know the financial health of my business on a receipt by receipt basis, not monthly, not quarterly. I can tell you today to the penny where I'm at, to the penny. And if I put one more receipt in, guess what? I have it to that accuracy. I never let this get out of control. Now, that said, I also know how to edit my website and make new pages, but not all that HTML code that's so complicated. However, I do have people, and I know enough to have my finger on the pulse to be able to articulate what I need them to do and to generate what we call a CTS, or a customer, that's me, technical specification, CTS, or scope of work, some people might call it, or whatever you want to call it. But it's something that ensures the KPIs, or the key performance indicators, are known, measured, and delivered. You've heard too many cases where, well, that's not what I thought we were making, or that's not what I wanted you to do, or that's not what I was expecting to get. Here's the invoice. So that's not a solution. So blind trust is simply too risky because the person doing this job may have what I'm going to call tunnel vision, where the owner has a wide angle view. So a helper, if you want to call them that, might suggest investing in X software. And then another person comes along with a different focus on your business and says, you just lost $25,000 this quarter. All of a sudden, you can't afford the annual fee for the very software that the other guy told you needed. Now you got a problem. Essentially, you need to know enough to direct and expect, not give and pray.
Wow, that's all very extreme.
Well, the sad part is it is extreme. And I'll tell you a neat thing I heard a few weeks ago. One of the people I was listening, because I listen to great people all the time, because I got two ears and one mouth, so I use them in that order. This person said, if you even think there's a problem, there's already a problem. There's no kind of trying to unthink it. If you even think there's a problem, there's a problem. And I think that's what makes all of this so profound, is that we all can kind of feel that spidey sense, the hair on the back of our neck. And the question is, do you pat it down, or do you pay attention to the fact that there's a problem and you can't ignore it because it's your problem? You just don't want to accept it. And we fight with it, and the sleepless nights. And it's just, I struggle to help business owners because I know they're struggling. And that is my absolute wish, to just make a dent.
That's great. I really like to hear that, people that are sharing their knowledge and helping others up, right? And I just want to take a second and acknowledge, welcome, Barham. I see that you're new to Clubhouse, so welcome to, and thank you for joining us on this room. I really appreciate you being here. And hello, Dee. I'm so happy to have you here, especially with what it is that you do and how you help people in business as well. So I welcome any information or suggestions or questions that you may have as we go through the rest of the show here. So thank you for being here. Okay, now, and Carly's here. Hi, Carly. Thank you for being here. Oh my goodness, I am so lucky to have all of these wonderful people in my world. Thank you so much. So Ron, when should someone seek outside professional help? How do you know, like, okay, now I can't wait anymore. I really need to bring somebody in that can then walk me through this.
One of the funniest things I've heard in business is, the person said to me one day, I traded in the 9 to 5 job, and now I have a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9. Basically, it's 12 hours a day. And I thought, okay, so that's your business. I don't want to buy that from you because I don't want to work 12 hours a day. So the problem is, after they've developed their business and it's running to the extent that they know everything that they can about what they need, and they're working to maximum capacity where they just don't have enough hours to keep going, that's when it's time to refocus and then get outside professional help that can be paid for and still leave a profit and a salary. If you're giving it all away, then you just might as well go get a job, right? So I think professional is a key word here, because you do not want help from a friend of a friend. And by that, I mean someone who just says, oh, I can help you out. So, it's all well-meaning, but if you have them in charge of your marketing as a favor, and they don't have the skin in the game, they don't have, the same tenacity, their name is not on the lease, it's not on the corporate papers. And so friendships can be destroyed by a friend business situation. And then there's the money part, the success, and all of a sudden they want a share of the wealth that they've now created. And then there's all kinds of personal issues that kick in. So it goes from bad to worse. So basically, keep your friends and your business services as accounts payable. Keep it professional and get people who truly know what they're doing, because they may know things that you never would have thought. And that's their specialty, especially when it comes to things like bookkeeping and taxes. Because I think that's just such a huge, huge component of business, is the financials, because the government won't let you up if you make a boo-boo.
That's true. That's true. So at this point, because we have new people in the room, I'm just going to do a quick room reset. And for those of you just joining us, welcome to the I Have People for That Club. This is where we help your business get the tools you need to accelerate your company's growth by presenting tools you can start using now. Please click on Ron's image to check out his bio and follow him on the app. And if what he's saying resonates for you, please go to the top of the room and click on the pinned link at the top of the screen to book a time with Ron. So now I will be back to you, Ron. And what is the second question any business owner needs to ask themselves?
Oh, you're going to love this one. This is one of my favorites. Well, let me start off with the trick part of that, because I gave you a little bit of a hint. The first question is the decision to go into business in the first place, to really make a go of this thing that you're good at, which sounds great. But the second question, and the one you asked, and it's actually more important, is When I decide to stop, what do I do with the business I've built? Does it go to a legacy, to children, to a partner? Do I sell it? Do I just close it? Am I bankrupt? How do you end this thing? How do you know how to dissolve the business, especially if you've become incorporated, which is a government entity? You can't just quit. There's all kinds of paperwork that has to terminate this corporate existence because there's tax returns and all that jazz. You can't just close the door. So an exit strategy and all the costs associated with doing that, the legal costs, and all of a sudden there's money required that may not even be in the business, especially with a spouse or partners that are involved. Sadly, even a death, for whatever reason, either the spouse is stuck with the business or the partner's spouse doesn't want the business, or the children have their own careers and have no idea what mom and dad's business is or its worth. That's a huge thing. You can imagine that in an estate sale when people are selling off their parents' property, have no idea what this stuff is worth. They just want to get rid of it so they can sell the house. And sadly, that's a terrible demise of personal property. You can imagine it was a business. So it's a huge issue that can't be brushed aside for a rainy day because it could rain tomorrow. So the answer in short form is one, start the business. Question number two, how do we dissolve the business when the end of the rainbow shows up? That's the most important thing, or you can get into a world of problems.
Wow. Yeah. Begin with the end in mind. That saying comes to my
Absolutely.
mind right now with what you're saying. Yes. So you had mentioned when we were talking on the phone earlier today, you had mentioned there are 4 pillars to every business in the world. What are they and how can they apply to people, to a billion-dollar company as much as they do to a solar professional or a solo entrepreneur?
This is a fun thing. When I discovered this and coined this phrase, I just thought, wow. And backing through 40 years of engineering in my career life that you mentioned at the top of the call, I found that every business in the world has 3 distinct sections to it, and it doesn't matter what business it is. That it has an input, a process, and an output. So as a crazy example, if you had a mine and the object was to mine iron ore, that's what you do. The mine is your input. You have this process for extracting it, and you make it into iron ore, which is rocks. Someone else takes those rocks, they melt it down, they separate the iron, and they make these big blocks of iron. Someone else takes the iron, melts it down, and makes sheet metal. Someone else takes the sheet metal, they make a toaster. Everybody has these same 3 stages. And so my 4 pillars are that the business must be sustainable, trainable, scalable, and salable. Sustainable meaning if you're working 70 hours a week, I don't want to buy your business. It's too much and you can't sustain that. And eventually you burn out. So that's not a good business model if that's what it takes. It's just too much. Now, so how do you do that? Well, you get people to work for you. So you have to be able to train people. So do you have a procedures manual for everything you do so you can train me to answer the phones the way you answer the phones or whatever the function is? Because if you don't train me right, or you train me to the best that you recall what you want me to do, then the best I can do is my version of what you told me, which is not always going to be good enough. And I could lose you a customer just by not knowing what you never did tell me. Scalable means the ability to grow the business beyond just yourself so that you're not the only one. And when you stop, the whole thing crashes. And salable, back to the original point about dissolution, if the business cannot be sold, and I don't mean just sell off the assets and get rid of all this stuff at 10 cents on the dollar. I mean sold as a viable business that continues on, then it was never a business, it's a hobby. And I mean that not to be disrespectful, but if you get it boink right between the eyes, then you're getting it. Because if it's not salable, it's not a business. And that is the saddest thing I see. I have a buddy that I went to high school and university with, and he took over his father's HVAC business. He's done this his whole life for 40 odd years. That's all he's done. I said to him, Did the 3 daughters want this? He said, nope. I said, what are you going to do with it? He says, I can't get my staff to ante up and buy the company. I don't even have good enough staff that I can train, because as soon as I train them, they leave. I said, what are you going to do with the business? He says, I have no idea. And here at 66 years of age, he's still working because he can't sell it and he can't get rid of it. So it's a really difficult problem. So sustainable, trainable, scalable, salable has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Those are the 4 pillars that I see as having the foundation on which a good business is built. And boy, if you lose one of them, it's crumble city.
Wow, that's not a very nice city to be in.
No.
So everything that you're saying here, I'm a systems and processes person as well.
Yes.
So how, and let me just run through something that I do in my business and in businesses that I help as well when it's appropriate. What I do is I do a customer journey mapping through the business. And every time there's a touch point between the business and the customer, or there's an opportunity to have a touch point where there might not have otherwise been one, I register that as an interaction, and then there needs to be a process put around that. Do you have any comments or feedback on that kind of a process to get their processes put in place?
Well, I think that your point's well taken. You really must have processes. And, you almost got to think of, if you're building a car, in the Henry Ford with the assembly line, if you don't have an exact process, an exact order to do things, then something's going to be either out of order and has to be disassembled to be reassembled, which is inefficient, or it's missing, and we call that a factory recall, or it's done wrong, we call that a boo-boo. And no matter how you slice it, the process, which now is information processing, if you want to reduce any business to information, even if you're building a widget, the process drives all of the steps. The steps require skill sets. The skill sets require people. You can get into the whole human resources, interviewing, staffing, and sustainable, trainable. All of these things are driven by the process to take your input, your process, and your output. And so it is not only midpoint to that entire entity called the business model, but it is absolutely mission critical, or the input doesn't get converted to an output and you can't sell it. So it's just so important what you do. I mean, it can't be stressed enough what you do.
Yes, absolutely agree. So I was really happy that Dee was here, because she actually is involved in the human resources part of that whole process, the processes in a business. And she helps companies get past those kind of roadblocks and not get themselves in trouble, when they're doing hiring and they're having to do any disciplinary actions or any of that sort of thing. So I highly encourage anyone that's here to also click on Dee's profile picture and follow her. And so now, doing this, I'm going to take, while I've got the mic, I'm going to just do another room reset here. And that is, for those of you just joining us, welcome to I Have People for That Club. This is where we help your business get the tools you need to accelerate your company's growth by presenting tools you can start using now. Please click on Ron's image to check out his bio and follow him on the app. And if what he's saying resonates for you, please click the pinned link at the top of the screen to book a time with Ron. So Ron, I know you had a couple of stories you were going to share with us about the success stories of how you helped different sized businesses. So can you share with us one or two of those?
Yes, I can. I'll start with one of the biggest. When I was in engineering, I was working for a company that designs parts for cars, switches as a specific. So in your car, there's all kinds of switches in the door, the steering wheel, at the center of the dashboard. And these switches, some of them are as cheap as $2, as in $2 to the big companies. and they designed a switch, and what was happening was the vehicle came with a base model, a middle model, and a high-end version. And of course, the high-end version, this little button in the middle of the dashboard, you get a 2-button version. There's 2 functions. You get both of them on the high-end car. On the other 2, you get one or the other depending which model you bought. And the problem was not the engineering, but the market feedback was the customers were saying, why doesn't this other thing move? Like, what does this do? And the salesman said, well, that's just a dummy plug. It's a placeholder that the big car has that function, but you don't get it. And they're like, well, what didn't I get? So the marketing pushback was customers are questioning, what didn't I get? So they're feeling cheated. Well, they're not. They're just not paying for the option. They're not getting them, but it just feels funny. So they said, we want a bigger button to cover this hole that the 2 buttons take up for the car that has that version. So the company spent $250,000 of the customer's money to design and build a switch. And I told them this will not work. It's got an issue. It's not going to, oh yeah, it'll work. We'll just tighten up the tolerances and beat up the suppliers. And I said, that's not going to work. So $250,000 later, they get the parts in. They assemble the parts. Forget a robot beating on this thing. They can't get it to go down with their finger. It's just jamming and cocking and sticking. And I told you it wasn't going to work. So management calls a big meeting. The president's in the room. He says, what are we going to do? And I said, here's what you need to do. So I go on the whiteboard and I doodle for 15 seconds. I want you to remember that, 15 seconds. And I said, this is what you should have done. Okay, fair enough. How much is this going to cost me? $55,000 US to change the mold, to reshape these parts to do what they should have been. We make 10 cents on a switch. How many times does 10 cents go into $55,000? Right? 550,000 switches just to pay for a tool change. So they go ahead with it because they got no option. We get the parts in. They grease them in the wrong place because they didn't read the drawing correctly. So what? It goes through testing, it passes. And the company placed an order for $60 million worth of this product. It took me 15 seconds. And the answer was inside the matrix that I created for the company of every design idea that I ever came up with. 1,235 lines worth in a spreadsheet. That's the power of the matrix that I teach.
So the 15 seconds that you took, being able to come up with a solution that is affordable and practical and gets everything done. Did they take your idea? Did they accept it, and did they proceeded with it?
They proceeded with it. They ordered the parts done that way. They came in, they passed all the testing, and that switch is in every single F-150 Ford truck since 2013.
Wow.
$60 million from a 15-second whiteboard doodle.
Wow.
And it was in the matrix. And that's the point, is I found a way to collate the intellectual property that was in my head and present it in a way that you can just look it up because of the way we coded it, which I'll get into later, called parameterization. But the point is, I dumped my brain and there was a solution that they just didn't want to read. And they made a big boo-boo to the tune of $250,000, and it almost cost them the job. And then they ended up making $60 million. So I think that's a pretty good ROI.
That is a really good ROI in any situation, for sure. So I just want to extend the if anyone has any questions or comments or things they'd like to, stories they'd like to share, please do raise your hand and I'll bring you up on stage, and we can have this be interactive. So in the meantime, hello, Iona. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. So what was the other story that you were going to tell us? Another success story?
Well, as you know from the top of the hour, I run a DJ company, so I do weddings and parties, and I'm an MC and all these kind of fun things. So I have lots of fun for a living. But I had a client here. Let's see, it's end of May, so yeah, end of April. They came to me, and I met them at a bridal show, and they said, you really gave us something to think about. And what it was is they did not have the money to pay for their wedding. They were freaking out at what this was going to cost them. So I resorted to my matrix where I have all the intellectual property that I've created over 40 years from the wedding industry. And I sat down with them for 2 hours and I shared with them, here's how we can help you create a better wedding and save you a fortune. When we were done, I had saved them $30,000 on a wedding that they now can afford to pay for the rest of it because they don't have to spend this 30 grand, and it's going to be a better wedding on top of it all.
So what was
So
this?
all of this is from the same protocol.
So what was the secret sauce in the wedding? Because everyone's getting married right now. I have been invited to
Yes.
so many weddings this summer already, just in the last 2 weeks.
Well, we booked 4 today, so I can tell you it is going absolutely gangbusters thanks to the reopening of the economy and the ability for people to actually get back to socializing. And so what we discovered from years of analyzing the wedding business, not as, glitz and glam, but I looked at it from an engineer, that's my curse. I looked at it from an engineer's perspective as data. We call it all head, no heart. All head, no heart. Once you have a wedding you can actually afford, then it's all heart, no head. Don't need head. So off we go. And what we've discovered is that not only are there some vendor categories that don't have the same impact. I'm not saying they're not nice to have and pretty and beautiful and all that. But if you have only got so much money to spend, you've got to focus on impact and results. And we discovered that the order in which you hire those vendors can make a huge difference in the cost of the wedding for the exact same company. So imagine that the exact same company hired in the wrong order can end up costing you $3,000 before dinner on the wedding day. That's a lot of money because you got the order wrong, because you didn't know what you needed to know at the time you made the decision. And it all comes from the matrix because I put everything I know in everything I do into this framework. And I'll tell you, the things I learned from seeing it in front of me are the biggest OMG moments of my life. I see things and go, wow, I never would have seen that if I didn't do it this way. So I think it's a profound visionary technique that I've developed since 1984, and I use it every day. I'm looking at it right now as I'm chatting with you folks. I live with this thing.
Yeah. Well, so to that point, Adil, who has his underneath his picture, it says space, space Appleseed. And that's something that you can ask him about when you get to talk to him. But what Adil is asking is, how does the matrix work? What are the constituent areas or pieces that make this matrix? He's also in engineering.
Okay. In its simplest form, and I don't want to do smoke and mirrors because I don't like them myself. In its simplest form, just imagine, if you will, a spreadsheet, rows and columns. Well, we call them little boxes, right? And in each little box goes a piece of information. And the rows and the columns define what should go in the little box. So you take what you know, you put it in the little boxes. Guess what? I don't know what to put in this box. Well, there you go. We've just learned something that you don't know about your business that you ought to know because there's a little box for it. And at the end of the day, we fill up this spreadsheet and it's multiple worksheets. So it's not like you have to go buy a piece of software. I really don't like having to buy yet another piece of software and learn how to use it and get proficient at it. Pretty much everybody understands a spreadsheet in the sense that it's rows and columns and little boxes. So you put what you know, you do a brain dump, if you will, and it allows you to not only empty your head and clear your mind of all that stuff that you're trying to juggle, but it lets you see patterns in that information. And those patterns show you, like I said at the beginning, whether you are consistent or not consistent in how you're processing the information that flows through your business. And I mean, it honestly, it blows my mind every time I do it. I just can't get enough of this thing. So that's I hope the answer to the question, but I do have a more prepared response, but I wanted to just jump on the nature. It's that simple, except for the part about the parametrics and the priority settings, which is kind of the secret sauce that makes it work. And that's what we teach in our workshops.
Ah, okay. So you host workshops then?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. So are these something that you put together for clients on demand, or is this something that you do in a regular basis that people can sign up for? Is it,
Well, kind of
how,
both.
how do you have it structured?
Well, I have a 2-day workshop called The Matrix Unleashed. I just thought that was a cool name. So we call it The Matrix Unleashed, and we show business owners a framework to create what we call digital shelving. It's a place to put everything they know about every aspect of their business. So they do a brain dump, not only to clear their head, but to see for the very first time their entire business on a screen, all organized and aligned, and even more valuable, they see what's missing. We call these missing elements holes, and they're leaking money. So whether it's making money, money costing, opportunity of time, effort, or some other metric, it all comes down to money, time for money, time value, time off. It needs to be measured and converted to a common unit, and money seems like a good unit to measure. Kind of makes sense. And dollars too. So once our clients see their own business from their own head, no one's telling them what to do. They're just doing their thing in the workshop. They realize how much they really know, which is pretty impressive, but they also are amazed at what they don't know. Now they can refocus, organize, and get to the delegating to unify their business processes. Back to the point about getting help. So we use a process called parameterization and prioritization, and we borrow things from the automotive industry and some really cool concepts and terms that they use to predict failure, because in car parts, the target point to enter the automotive industry is 99.99973%, or 3 parts per million. That's pretty good, eh? So you really can't make too many boo-boos in a car because there's 15,000 parts. And if everyone failed periodically, the car would never be on the road, it'd be in the shop. So these parameters create the consistency, and the priority creates the order of what to do. That way, we turn to do into ta-da! No more shoebox of receipts, papers all over, lists half scratched off, post-it notes. It's all gone because it's more of a mindset shift to just put it in the matrix and not fall back into old habits, as we see too often. And it represents a collection of intellectual property, or IP. Imagine if someone died and no one can see inside their head. If it's all in the matrix, at least there's an operating practice. At least it's somewhere to be found and dealt with, not left to fate or the financial nightmare that could ensue. So we consider this IP, or intellectual property, kind of an insurance policy for the business's value.
Yes, sorry, I was just having a conversation in the back channel with Adil. Yeah, he he was curious and interested by your answer and your response to his question. So that was very good.
Well, thank you. I hope it
Um,
hit the mark.
yeah, and I'm sure that the two of you will get to connect sometime again. And and like I said, so I'll do another room reset here. For those of you just joining us, welcome to I Have People for That Club. This is where we help your business get the tools you need to accelerate your company's growth by presenting tools you can start using now. Please click on Ron's image to check out his bio and follow him on the app. And if what he's saying resonates for you, please click on the pinned link at the top of the screen to book a time with Ron. And if you're liking what you're hearing on the I Have People for That Club, go all the way to the top of the screen and click on the little green house and follow us to get notifications when we open rooms. Thank you. Ron, you were just saying, we've got Manny that would like to come up on stage, so I'm going to bring him up. There we go. There you are, Manny. Unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question or.
Yeah, good evening, Christine. Good evening, Ron, and other participants. I kind of wanted to ask Ron what he thinks about my business, because as much as his words were hard to hear and annoying, he's really right. I am Ron doesn't know me. I'm a mortgage broker, and just like you said, if you work yourself in the business, then you don't have a business. You can't scale it if you can't sell it. If it's not sellable, then what kind of business do you have? Which is very true in my industry, because my industry has been notoriously known to have brokers. Basically, they don't retire. They died hunched over on their keyboards, because the minute they stop working, the business has no more value. It's very much relationship business, so you can't really sell. You can sell your book of business, but you can't really sell the relationship, which is quite a challenging. So, any advice or idea or something that you saw about how to pour value into a business like mine that is based on me and my relationship that I created with my client?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I was a little scared when you said that it was hard to take, and I didn't I but then you qualified it as being true. So thank you. I was about to have a heart attack and fall on my keyboard. So no, but you know what? You're absolutely right. And it's funny that people sometimes think that a product-based business, that where you make a physical, tangible thing, is somehow impervious to the very problem that the business you're talking about has. In fact, they all have it. So yours is just more victim of the same symptom. So let's talk about your business. You have a business which has a book value, the little black book of customers and all that relationship stuff that causes them to come back to you when they buy or sell their house and they need a mortgage and they want you to help them negotiate, and all of that mortgage brokery stuff, which frankly, given the complexity of real estate transactions, I wouldn't imagine doing it without someone like you. The challenge then
Mhm.
is, how do you keep records of your clients, to keep in touch so that you're always top of mind for referrals to even their neighbors when they move in or their neighbors when they're moving out? Like, I call it the extended reach of that customer. And if you have a great relationship and it's documentable, and there's a follow-up process, an annual or biannual, or like every couple of years, how you doing, how's things going, like that kind of ongoing touch point, which of course we track all this in the matrix because it's a category that we can get into the whole communications protocol that says we want to keep in touch with these people. I'm going to give you an example in my world how that worked, that allows you to stay top of mind so that you have an ongoing source of clients. That's the input for your process. Otherwise, you're right, it just dries up. And so that's a real struggle. So I think the answer to your question is an ongoing mechanism to keep top of mind so you're the go-to person. And what we find sometimes helps is a referral program where they get something. And I know in some business, some industries, you're not allowed to do this. And I've talked to some real estate people and they can't. So I'm not sure in your area of the world, but and obviously we don't want to push the law, but any kind of a referral program that rewards people for helping you with people that you would have otherwise never met can produce incredible what's the word I want, extension of your capacity and your reach. And that, I think, is the secret to the ongoing inputs to your business that creates that legacy that if you just stopped, it doesn't stop. And that's your point. If you stop, everything stops. And that's a one-man or one-person business. And that's just not going to survive that whole salability concept. So very good question. Thank you for asking. And I'm sure everybody out there is interested in that kind of an answer for themselves, because we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and yeah,
we've.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Christine.
Sorry, go
Um,
ahead, Manny.
so in my industry, we talk a lot about the CRM, and each and every one of us has his own system, whatever CRM they chose to go with. So I have the CRM and I'm updating it. And at a certain point, when I start doing, like you said, the top of mind, but um, all those systems and processes are, we have them and we improve on them all the time and we build them. And just like Christine said, the client journey and for sure the touch point of, I call it mortgage health check, right? Like every year, call the client, are you still comfortable? What it is that what's happening in your life that might have changed and changed the needs, right? So there's all that, but again, it goes back to the relationship. And a few brokers that have tried to sell their book of business and retired have found that it has zero value. And even I just had a conversation the other day with another broker, and she went to work with two other brokers because they said we have a 4,000 people database that we will let you mine. And she has worked on those 4,000 people database for roughly a year and a half and managed to get barely any business out of there because again every time she called, oh, we were used to dealing with this guy, if he's no longer there then I have other options.
Yep. So let me speak to that, because it's a very valid point. In the DJ business, we find exactly the same thing. Coming out of COVID, we call up a client that we used to service before, and well, that person's no longer here. The new person on the social committee or the new person who's the beverage manager at the golf club, these people have changed over. So we're starting over in that sense of the word, as if we started yesterday, not 40 years ago. The other part of this that's so fascinating in your question, at the top of the hour, Christine asked me the question of what's the second question you should ask when you start a business? And the answer is, how do I end it? Going into mortgage brokerage, knowing that the end of the rainbow, this book of leads is worth $0. Let's just respectfully say at the end of the rainbow, you got nothing. If you knew that going in, you wouldn't be as surprised as some people in your company or your industry might be, because they didn't know that going in. They thought they'd build this 4,000 person list and sell it for $1 million. Turns out it's not worth the paper it's written on. They spend a year and a half trying to mine it and they come up with sand, no diamonds. If they knew that going in, then maybe they wouldn't have spent so much or saved differently or readjusted their own finances, not living high off the hog and perhaps beyond their means, thinking there's this big cash cow at the end of the day, and it's not there. So that again is a reality check going in. What's the other end look like? And I think that's a profound point you make, because sadly, if you get to the other end and it's worth nothing, and you were counting on some 5, 6, 7 figures, and it's not there, now what do you do? Because you're at an age, a point in life where you just can't put another 10 years into building your retirement fund because you thought that was this. So that's a profound, your case in point is a profound example of the point I made earlier about the salability, which drives to the second question of how do you dissolve the business? And again, it's a case of 2020 hindsight, except we turn our head the other way. Now we can see what the heck we're looking at before we jump in with both boots. And you know what? Sometimes not jumping in is a good idea, because the other side of that equation is not so good. Our whole process in the Matrix is to try to be as predictive of the domino sequence of failure that could lead to something you never saw coming, if not for it being laid out on the screen and you go, I got nothing to put in that box. And if that's what I've done, I think we've done a good job in at least bringing that concept to people's mindset tonight. Thank you for asking. That's a fabulous situation.
And thank you, Manny. I have a couple more questions from the audience. So Barham has asked, how do you make your employees stay after you've teach them everything and invested a lot of time and effort on them? And I just want to, before I let you say something, Ron, I just want to say that Adil chimed in and helped with that as well. And he said, love your teammates like John Wooden would have. Pay them a competitive wage and take care of all their needs. Great benefits, great culture, great work environment are all big pluses. And so, I just want to acknowledge Barham and Adil, Space Appleseed, aka Space Appleseed, and thank him for being supportive in the room as well, and in with the audience. So, do you have any other items to share, Ron, around keeping employees and because we do, it costs a huge amount of money to get them and train them and all of this, and then having them leave. And it's very common these days, sad to say.
Yes, actually, I heard a statistic many years ago, and so it's actually way out of date, but it cost $250,000 from the time someone says, we need a person in position X, until that person is found, hired, trained, and off probation. $250,000, and they haven't been paid that much yet. That's what it costs the company in recruiting. And despite all the digital platforms for recruiting and resumes and all that jazz, it's still not insignificant to have a new hire. The points you raised about retention and benefits and all of that, those are all obviously valid metrics. So here's the answer. If you put all of the benefits that you offer the client, all of those things like competitive wages, hours, flexibility, paid holidays, vacation time, all of these wonderful elements of the job description into the matrix, you could compare across industries, across your competitors, and see, where are we at? They have something we're not offering. Could we offer that? We've got something that's better than theirs. Maybe it's too much better and it's costing us more than we need to spend just yet. Maybe that's the 5-year pin. Maybe that's the 10-year pin that you get to these different levels of compensation. So I think that, again, when you lay it all out and see it on a screen, you can do these comparative and proportional analysis. That's what we do in order to put a value on every element. And to put it in perspective, and only because I do this all day long, my DJ business has a list of 40 features, advantages, and benefits we offer our clients. And when you compare us to the other DJ companies, they don't have all this. So therein comes the value proposition for us, but the risk. If you don't get this, what aren't you getting? And clients get to see that, and then they make a decision. Now, your employees are going to have to be presented with, this is what we can offer you. And if you already know what they can or can't get elsewhere, that loyalty disappears in terms of them leaving, because they know they got a good deal. And I think that the whole quantification of these different elements of the job in terms of the compensation and that loyalty program is what's going to keep them there long term. And maybe you get into partnerships or shareholders or stock or other ways to buy into the business so that now they have some real skin in the game. And next thing you know, you've got the most loyal workforce on the planet. So it's a very good question and highly matrixable, if that's a funny word.
So please do take Ron up on his offer by clicking on the pinned link at the top of the screen and click on his face to see his bio and follow him. And if you're enjoying the content, please go to the very top of the page and click on the little green house to follow the club and get notified when new rooms get opened and scheduled. And good night, good people. And we'll talk with you again next week. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.